Don't believe everything that you hear, and don't believe everything that you read. A number of years ago, there was a famous psychological experiment done, and it involved giving round about 100 people a personality profile test. Now, the questions for the test were put together by a team of expert psychologists. After the questionnaires came back, the same psychologists painstakingly went through the answers, and they came up with an individual personality profile for each of the people that had taken part. Almost everybody said it was uncanny how accurate it was, and that the profile they'd been given described them to a T. Here's what really happened. A group of non-psychologists wrote a bunch of random questions while they were having a coffee break one day. When the questionnaires had been filled in and they got them back, they put them in the bin. They got some newspapers and they cut out the horoscopes, and they cut the horoscopes down into sentences, and they literally pasted them together into what sounded like roughly meaningful paragraphs. They wrote down 5 or 6 of these paragraphs, and they gave the same thing to everybody, and almost everybody said it was uncanny how well it described them. This has become known as the Forer effect, F-O-R-E-R, also known as the acceptance phenomenon. And it's a human trait that says we are very likely to accept almost any feedback that's given to us about our personality, as long as we trust the source that it came from. And as we've just heard about, that source doesn't have to even be genuine, it just has to be believable. And the Forer effect is magnified if the feedback we're given about our personality is positive feedback. If you say to almost anybody, you're a strong person, and I know that you've been through some big challenges in your life. You're a natural leader and people look up to you, but sometimes you need to believe in yourself a little bit more. And I know you've been worried about something recently, but I can tell you're about to make a big breakthrough with it. Most people will go, yeah, that sounds about right. Now, there are times when this trait can be really useful, especially if you're a coach or a leader of any kind. But there are times when this can really trip you up if you're not aware of the implications. Take personal development books, for example, and in general, I'm a big fan of these books. However, there are a few things that you need to be aware of. And firstly, they're written in a very general way to be applicable to as many people as possible. And that very general way of speaking amplifies the Forer effect. If you read a book about how to be more successful, as we probably all have, and if that book talks about a fear of failure, it's very easy to identify with that and say, fear of failure, that's what's been holding me back all these years. And then we read another book about fear of success, and if we can identify with that too and say, yes, I've also got fear of success and a fear of what other people might think of me. And if we're not careful, we identify with all of these things and we can install them as beliefs. I've come across a lot of people on my journeys as a coach who've got a fear of failure and a fear of success and a fear of whatever else that they never had until they read about it in a book. I'm not saying don't read these books. In fact, I'm saying do read them, because they do more good than not. But what I am saying is engage your brain and think about what you're reading, because if you don't, you can become hypnotized by the words in the same way that a poor teacher who tells a child over and over again that you'll never amount to anything can install that as a belief. If we read about fear of failure over and over again, we can be hypnotized by those same words unless we're aware of the concept and think about what you read rather than just accepting it. If you're a coach or a leader, this can be a big part of your toolkit. For example, if you're working with somebody who's low in confidence, the odd comments such as, I'm really noticing you start to grow in confidence recently, can go a long way to boosting their self-esteem. There are a couple of caveats that go with that though. The first is, don't make a big deal about it. You don't need to sit down and have an in-depth, serious conversation. If anything, make it as an offhand comment and then change the subject. It means that they don't have time to disagree with the comment you just made. Secondly, you've got to be genuine. Don't tell someone you think they're growing in confidence if you don't, because they will see straight through you. And the third thing is be as specific as you can and give evidence to back it up if possible. So for example, I love the way that you handled that call with the other day with that customer who was getting angry. It showed a lot of professionalism and it shows that you're growing in confidence. So thanks for your help with that. Well, what are you doing the weekend, by the way? You're taking the kids away? and just move on and let those words sink in. So the Forer effect, be aware of it. If somebody says to you, you're lazy, that our natural tendency is to accept that, and don't, because the only person who has any right to make any judgments about your personality is you. And remember to be fair and realistic with yourself.